Tacoma has a park called Wright Park, I believe, in which there is a very revealing sculpture, statue of an elderly man and a very little girl. And the man is captured in a spiritual balance between his awe of her upcoming humanity and her respect for his elderly dignity. And it shows you that there's a spiritualist temperament to the madmen in the U.S. Army who put together something that was known to them as Operation Little Girl. The little girl Rosemary Willis in the Dealey Plaza was part of this representation, as was the prank. Well, for them was a terroristic narrative prank. When I say them, I mean Yoko Ono, Roger Waters, King Crimson, of hammering me into a coffin-like shack with the voluptuous Dee Dee of Seven Beauties, Fulton Mini, that the people of Pittsburgh went along with to point the finger at their prey, the wriggling finger of Pope Carl and the parochial savage. And it was called Little Girl, and you find Little Girl semiotics throughout their super story from the 50s and so forth. In movies, the background of their movies. The Two Virgins Syndicate, which plays this old parochial line that pleasure isn't love and all of that. The use of Newland as a super encryption suggests that Rye knew, because his name is Ryland, right? Rye knew. Take land out and you get Rye knew. Did my father know? I have no idea. The Texas School Book, his own books speak well of JFK, and he was killed by this team. Yoko Ono crept up behind him and cased me through campus mafia arrangements with the help of the Carls in the U.S. Army. They even used a signifier with John Schulman's gang of Star Cynic, like arsenic and old base. The letters were in the old napkin drawer of my great grandmother. So the idea of taking a little boy from the U.S. Navy and converting him into a sacrificial symbol to appease the Japanese trafficking division of NEVA Corporation for the U.S. Armed Forces was one of Hitler Reagan's projects. And my father had a saying, let's not say we did, that it's probably the most incriminating of the things that he said. Let's not say we did. Because the basis, he used to take me to Clint Eastwood films. The one like Where Eagles Dare, anyway, he took me to. Night of the Generals. First book I read cover to cover was Battle of Britain. The enshrinement of the World War II legacy came with some understanding that there was moral questions attached to Hiroshima. I read John Hershey's book. I read Neville Shute's book. I tried to read John Tolan, and of course I devoured and ravaged Martha Gellhorn's books, her nonfiction books. Sounded out a book about General Foucher, who was a friend of hers, unbeknownst to me. So I got maneuvered into aristocratic, sovereign token piece to help lube up the licky chops of Roger Waters for a human sacrifice. And Bowie had it figured that even though he spoke loud and clear of DD and genocide and gave Hitler salutes, worked with Reagan on the whole project and advocated for Gail Burst and ignored her vestige on the cover of a 1979 Fripp album, he could say by trickery and switcheroo that Queerball was owed because of John Lennon. So it was a Lennon trick. I was his monkey. And they called it Little Girl because the little boy bomb was called Little Boy. So they get even with the little girl. See, it's a wheel, it's a clockwork. But what they said was, oh, you had sex, so you should give all of your life's work to the victims of our Venus flytrap little girl machine. And they were very good with arabesque poetry devices during the TikTok war. And I picked up on a girl who I do greatly admire. She's about 12, which is characteristic of them. The police have, Washington has been so good as to evaluate the whole thread of terrified correspondence, indications that my bed was shaking, the hideous pornographic ideas of Bill Gates during Obama. And of course, I ransacked. I was trying to figure out what had happened and where the evidence was. I found that symbol of the sea and the Star of David for Nina Pornographic, and was able to put together a presentation that shows that although she won the trust of the victims, as was planned by the rock industry, that Yoko Ono's film, The Fly, was actually contempt for them, and an advertisement of her partnership with Wadmaker and Susie Wadmaker and the Mancines and Gail Burston. It's a peculiar fetish of Yoko Ono to play devil's advocate against the mentality of Greg Carl while setting up a sting on their totalitarian dominance. Because trafficking isn't really about chivalry. It uses chivalry to get what it wants. It's about conquest. Yeah. That's one of the reasons we don't have sex education, is because people would learn about trafficking and understand that love is used to, that's a Venus flytrap, that's a language bait. And of course, they would learn from study of the script and the Neba Corporation that women aren't always innocent. They just get the play innocent because of the talk show host veneer. of Neva Pornographic Attorney Studios, New York Television elements of the production team behind this catastrophic seance, raising the spirit of genocide as though it's a religious icon. And I don't have anything against my dearest of interests when it comes to this little girl of Gaza. I don't have anything against the people who are confused or committed to Islam or who would despise me. As long as they leave me alone, what can I say? What I do feel is that the magnitude of the crime committed by the people of Gaza forces us to brave and bear some burden of responsibility for the mental health catastrophe that is going to find its attempts to heal in religious meditation. I know what it's like to go through trauma and confusion. It's not a happy incident. And the way it was used was they claimed therapy. But if you look at the planning of it and the trickery of it, you can see that that was an alibi for cold-blooded premeditation, the idea that it was therapy. I mean, there's probably saying we poisoned him in the eyes is therapy. That's a very sick thing to say. They turned my tears for Gaza into pus because they wanted to make a hateful statement about Tears for Gaza. And it might seem like a hard line by people who know what Gaza faces towards somebody of a different society in a different precinct. But my research is really very important and convincing. And I was warning people in 1993 and 1994, the people who resisted taking action against Gail Burson, have hoodwinked everybody and allowed what Seattle was calling building momentum to the Gaza massacre. They were behind the Supernova Rape Massacre, the Supernova up here in Tacoma, the store location, and they were behind the Blue House Rave Massacre and the Kennedy assassination, the Burson script. And I don't think it's anything that we can do about the human condition. There's a Tube song that has an interlude where a guy goes, "Thank heavens for little girls." I mean, anybody would feel that way who had respect for human nature. But the way these vicious pedophiles are trying to spin castrating me and misrepresenting my work and all of the other terroristic things that Yoko Ono has done incessantly, for some reason, incredible complicity on the part of Seattle. It's shocking. I can only explain it because with my father's old remark, "Let's not say we did." That's the only thing that explains it. It's Lenin Sudini. Can't really explain the slip knot any other way. Lenin had to have been in on it. That explains the likeness of Gail Burson on Robert Fripp's record from 1979.